Welcome to the deep dive. You might look out at the towering oak or maybe a huge eucalyptus in your yard and see this permanent, sturdy fixture, just like part of the background of your daily life.
Right. It just feels like it's always been there.
Exactly. But the reality is actually entirely different. A mature tree is a massive, incredibly heavy living structure. And when the biological systems holding that structure together start to fail, you're no longer looking at a beautiful landscape feature. You are looking at a ticking time bomb.
I mean, it completely shifts your perspective once you understand the sheer mass we're talking about here. We tend to view our landscape so passively.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you have a failing, 10,000-pound structure hovering over your driveway or your roof or your neighbor's property, that's an immense liability. Professional tree removal isn't just landscaping.
No, not at all.
It's a high-stakes intersection of biology, extreme physics, and, risk management. Ignoring a decaying canopy is fundamentally no different than ignoring a severe crack in your home's foundation.
Which is exactly why our mission today is to explore what it actually takes to safely dismantle a massive tree step by step. We are pulling insights from the arboriculture specialists at Tree Service Perfection West Covina. And I want to start by shifting how we actually look at these giants, because most of us, we just look at the leaves.
Right. If the leaves are green, everyone assumes everything is perfectly fine.
Exactly. But diagnosing a failing tree requires looking for much more subtle clues, and often starting from the top down. I know large, dead branches just kind of lingering up in the upper canopy are essentially the first cry for help.
Oh, absolutely. Those upper canopy dead zones are massive indicators. A tree allocates its resources based entirely on survival.
Right.
So if it can't pump water and nutrients all the way up to its highest points, it is actively shutting down peripheral systems to protect its core.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then, if you cast your eyes down the main trunk, you might spot deep vertical cracks running through the bark right into the wood that indicates structural torsion or severe internal splitting.
And down at the base, if you see sudden fungal growth like conchs or mushrooms blooming near the soil line, that's the ultimate red flag, right?
It really is.
Yeah.
That usually points to the most dangerous element, which is the decay we can't actually see, the root system.
Because a tree could look, moderately healthy above ground, but underneath it's a completely different story. Poor drainage or just constant overwatering from a lawn sprinkler system creates the perfect environment for root rot.
Root rot is incredibly insidious because it attacks the tree's entire structural anchor. There are specific fungal networks, these fast-growing mycelium, that thrive in constantly saturated soil.
And they literally eat the roots, right?
They do. They digest the structural lignin of the tree's roots. The roots basically turn to mush. By the time you notice the soil heaving around the base, or you see the massive trunk starting to list just slightly to one side, the battle's already lost.
You just have tons of dead weight resting on a completely dissolved foundation. Which brings in the whole environmental trigger aspect. Living in Southern California, we have this brutal combination of extreme baking heat in August that stresses the vegetation, followed by those ferocious Santa Ana winds in October.
It's the worst-case scenario for a compromised tree.
I'm just trying to visualize a 10,000-pound eucalyptus tree with a rotting root system suddenly getting hit by 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts. The kinetic energy there is terrifying. That tree isn't just going to gracefully tip over onto the grass.
No. The destruction is catastrophic. When a tree of that mass fails due to wind load, it crushes whatever is in its path. Garages, vehicles, load-bearing walls of a house, and the liability falls entirely on the property owner.
Right, because a neglected dying tree is an aggressive threat to your neighbors.
Exactly. Homeowners insurance might cover the immediate physical damage to an adjoining property, but the subsequent premium hikes and, potential negligence lawsuits, they are staggering.
And that plays directly into the fire season aspect as well. CAL FIRE aggressively enforces defensible space requirements for a reason. Dead, dried-out vegetation towering over a roof is essentially pure fuel waiting for an ember.
It's a massive hazard.
So, getting a dangerous tree off the property is really about protecting your financial assets and your family. But I can easily see someone listening to this, looking at the cost of a professional removal, looking at a leaning tree and thinking, isn't it easier and cheaper to just play weekend warrior, rent a heavy-duty chainsaw from the hardware store, grab my tallest ladder, and take care of this leaning tree myself?
Well, please don't do that. The statistics on why you should never do that are horrifying.
Yeah.
The International Society of Arboriculture consistently ranks tree care among the most dangerous professions in the world.
Really?
Yes, OSHA logs hundreds of severe, life-altering injuries in the tree care sector every single year. And keep in mind, those are among people who actually have training.
Because the forces at play are completely unpredictable for a layperson, right? Wood under pressure just does not behave the way you'd expect it to.
That is the core issue, yes. A tree leaning or carrying a heavy canopy creates immense internal pressure. It's known as tension wood and compression wood.
Okay.
So when you take a chainsaw to a branch holding thousands of pounds of tension, the exact moment the wood fibers sever, that branch can violently kick back. It acts like a loaded spring.
Oh, wow.
It'll throw a person off a ladder instantly, or the chainsaw itself kicks back right into the operator. The local trauma centers regularly see the aftermath of these weekend warrior attempts. Leaving the heavy extraction to highly insured professionals is just a non-negotiable safety requirement.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Because I imagine when a premium professional crew actually arrives, they can't just fire up the chainsaws and start hacking at the lowest branches. They have to treat the site like a structural inspection first.
Absolutely. A rigorous evaluation dictates the entire operation. This is step one. An arborist must assess the structural integrity of every single limb.
So they're diagnosing the load-bearing capacity before applying any mechanical force.
Precisely. They are hunting for hollow cavities, destructive pest infestations like wood-boring beetles that have compromised the core, and that deep-rooted decay we discussed earlier. They need a complete, three-dimensional mental blueprint of the tree's weak points.
Because if a climber ties off to a branch that looks solid from the ground, but it's hollowed out by termites inside.
The result is fatal, period.
And part of that evaluation isn't just biological, it's bureaucratic, too. I know municipalities have incredibly strict ordinances about what you can and cannot remove. Like the city of West Covina, for example, requires specific permits for removing parkway trees or certain heritage species, regardless of whether they are on your private property or not.
Yeah, legal compliance is a massive hurdle in step one. Fines for illegal tree removal, especially for protected native species, can easily run into the tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Right. So a legitimate professional service handles that entire municipal permitting process up front. They ensure the removal is legally cleared before a single piece of equipment is even unloaded from the truck.
That makes sense. And once the legalities are cleared, we move to step two, mapping out the physical strategy. To me, this feels exactly like architectural demolition.
That's a great way to put it.
Because you wouldn't use a wrecking ball on a glass skyscraper nestled in a dense city block. You'd dismantle it based on its specific building materials. And in the yard, the tree species is the building material, and that dictates the teardown method. You absolutely cannot cut down a 60-foot Mexican fan palm the same way you fell a dying elm.
No, the mechanics and the cellular structure of those trees are entirely different. Palms, structurally, are not actually trees in the traditional sense.
Wait, they aren't?
No, they lack a solid wood core with annual growth rings. They are actually more closely related to grasses. They're made up of dense bundles of vascular tissue.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, so this means they are incredibly flexible, but they do not support weight the same way hardwood does.
So how does a climber actually get up a 60-foot palm without snapping it?
They have to utilize specialized, spikeless climbing gear and friction hitches. If you use traditional steel climbing spikes on certain palms, you can introduce fatal bacterial infections to the trunk, or severely compromise those vascular bundles we just talked about.
Oh, I see.
The climber has to ascend using harnesses that distribute their weight evenly, fully understanding the precise flex limits of the palm. If a climber miscalculates the structural integrity of a decaying palm trunk, their own body weight can cause the top half of the tree to completely snap off and plummet.
That is terrifying. Contrast that with towering eucalyptus trees. They're notorious in Southern California for having surprisingly shallow root systems relative to their immense height and just incredibly heavy, brittle wood. You can't just shimmy up them with a friction hitch, right?
No way. Eucalyptus teardowns demand complex, heavy-duty rigging. Their branches often grow at bizarre angles, which creates massive, unbalanced weight distribution.
Wow.
When a eucalyptus fails, it fails catastrophically. So the operation has to transition from climbing to intricate mechanical engineering.
Which brings us to step three, the actual takedown. This is where the physics becomes mind-bending to me. The goal isn't just to make the tree fall over. I mean, anyone with an axe can make a tree fall over eventually.
Exactly.
The engineering challenge is defying gravity to dismantle a 10,000-pound object piece by piece and lower those massive chunks of wood to the earth incredibly slowly without destroying the house sitting 10 feet away.
What's fascinating here is that the surgical precision relies entirely on advanced friction devices. The most critical tool in the arborist's arsenal for this is something often called a porter wrap, or a friction cylinder.
How does that work?
Well, it is anchored to the base of the tree. The rigging rope goes up into the canopy, through a heavily reinforced pulley block, ties onto the branch being cut, and then the other end wraps around this steel cylinder down at the bottom.
Okay, I'm picturing this setup. You have a climber 60 feet in the air, making the final cut on a limb that weighs, say, 500 pounds. Gravity immediately wants to pull that limb straight down through the homeowner's expensive hardscaping or right through the living room window. How does a single person on the ground stop hundreds of pounds of free-falling momentum?
It all comes down to kinetic energy dissipation. As the limb falls, the groundworker controls the rope wrapped around the friction cylinder. Each wrap of the rope multiplies the friction exponentially.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah, so instead of the worker taking 500 pounds of force into their own arms, the steel cylinder absorbs it. The friction converts that immense kinetic energy into heat.
That is so cool.
The groundworker can smoothly and safely lower a massive chunk of wood using literally just 2 fingers on the rope, gently bringing it to rest right on the grass.
And that slow descent is the difference between a pristine yard and a landscape that looks like a meteor impact zone. You prevent massive craters in the turf, you protect the delicate flower beds, the irrigation systems, and obviously the home's exterior walls.
Because gravity does not allow for a margin of error. If a massive trunk section swings slightly off its intended trajectory, maybe a sudden microboost of wind catches it, or the internal rot caused the wood to hinge unpredictably, those forces are unstoppable.
Yeah.
This is the exact scenario where you rely heavily on the company's ironclad liability and workers' compensation insurance.
Because if you hired a cheap, unverified service off a neighborhood app and their wobbly rigging snaps sending a 1,000-pound log crashing through your roof, that financial devastation is on you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Verifying up-to-date arborist certifications, inspecting their heavy-duty rigging equipment, and ensuring transparent pricing without hidden fees, those are just the baseline standards for hiring a crew.
Okay, let's fast forward. The complex rigging worked perfectly. The canopy is dismantled, the massive trunk sections have been safely lowered, the tree is officially down. A lot of people might look at the jagged stump sitting in the middle of a dirt patch, look at the piles of sawdust and branches and think, the job is done.
Most people do think that.
But leaving the yard in that state actually creates a completely new set of severe hazards, which brings us to step 4, total debris cleanup.
Yes. The debris cleanup is rarely viewed as a critical protective measure by homeowners, but it is absolutely vital. The takedown process covers the ground in wood chips, shredded bark, and fallen leaves. And in a warm climate, that organic material begins to decompose rapidly.
And rapidly decaying wood is the absolute ultimate attractant for subterranean termites, carpenter ants, and wood-boring beetles. You're essentially laying out a massive buffet for wood-destroying organisms.
The biology of foraging termites is fascinating and, honestly, terrifying. They follow moisture gradients and the chemical signals of decaying cellulose. They will quickly colonize the yard debris, but once they exhaust that food source, the colony does not just die off, it expands.
Oh, no.
Yes. Those foraging trails often lead directly from the decaying wood chips in the yard, straight at the side of your house, and into the structural framing of your foundation.
So complete removal of all that debris is literally a preventative pest control measure. Though I should mention there is a caveat for anyone with a fireplace.
Oh, right.
If the tree being removed is a hardwood species and the arborist confirms it is completely free of fungal disease or beetle infestation, the crew will often cut the solid trunk into manageable 16-inch firewood rounds and stack them for you. But all the unusable branches, the leafy debris, the sawdust, that all has to be hauled away immediately.
Right. Leaving zero organic waste is the only way to ensure the perimeter of the home is secure. But the most common area where property owners attempt to cut corners is step 5, the stump. Many view stump grinding as a purely cosmetic, optional add-on service.
Which seems like a massive error to skip. I mean, on the most basic level, a stump hidden beneath slightly overgrown grass is a brutal tripping hazard for kids or guests, and it will effortlessly destroy the blades of a lawnmower. But the hazards go much deeper than a stubbed toe, don't they?
Oh, much deeper. A decaying stump is an active biological threat. As the wood rots underground, it acts as an incubator for pathogenic fungi. Agricultural extension programs like the UC Master Gardener program constantly emphasize that these fungal infections do not stay contained to the dead stump.
They spread.
Very easily. Fungal spores and mycelial threads spread outward through the surrounding soil moisture, easily infecting the root systems of your remaining completely healthy plants and trees.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. The concept that completely blew my mind is the idea of a zombie root system. We generally assume that once you sever the trunk, the entire organism dies. But the root system can actually survive the decapitation and continue functioning entirely subsurface.
It's incredible. Certain highly resilient species will continue to pull water and nutrients from the soil long after the canopy is gone. The root system remains metabolically active, and as those subsurface roots continue to expand and search for resources, they undergo cell division.
And the hydraulic pressure of that cellular expansion is shockingly powerful. I've seen thick concrete completely shattered by a root just a few inches in diameter. As those zombie roots expand, they exert immense upward and outward pressure, causing heavy concrete walkways, expensive brick patios, and reinforced driveways to buckle and crack open.
The only guaranteed method to halt that subsurface destruction is deploying a high-powered stump grinder. This isn't just about cutting the stump flush with the soil line. No, these machines utilize a massive steel wheel covered in carbide-tipped teeth that spin at incredible speeds.
So they literally pulverize the stump and the vital root crown, just churning the solid wood into fine mulch, often going 12 to 18 inches below the surface of the earth. They destroy the biological capacity of the roots to regenerate.
Exactly. Once the primary root crown is completely ground out, the cavities filled in, the earth is leveled, and you are left with a biologically safe blank canvas. It's ready for sod or new hardscaping. You eliminate the tripping liability, you remove the decaying pest magnet, you stop the fungal spread, and you completely halt any threat of subsurface roots destroying your concrete.
For someone listening who simply wants to reclaim their weekend, who has no desire to spend their Saturday dragging bug-infested logs to the curb or worrying about concrete damage, the value proposition here is just huge.
It really comes down to totally outsourcing the labor and the liability. Navigating municipal regulations regarding bulky item pickup and green waste disposal is a headache all on its own.
Oh, absolutely.
A premium service manages the strict local compliance, the heavy hauling, and the eco-friendly disposal. The property owner bypasses all of the physical danger and bureaucratic stress.
When you lay out the entire process, from identifying the hidden underground rot that compromises a 10,000-pound tree, to mapping out the specialized physics of rigging and lowering the canopy, all the way to pulverizing the stump below the soil line, it completely reframes how you look at the landscape.
It definitely shows that a yard is an asset that demands proactive management. A clean, safe yard dramatically increases curb appeal, stops pest invasions, and honestly just provides total peace of mind during storm season.
Well said. So next time you look out your window at the beautiful, towering trees in your neighborhood, ask yourself, are you looking at a thriving, structurally sound ecosystem, or are you looking at hidden liabilities taking root underground and branching out over your roof? It makes you wonder what invisible forces are really at work beneath the soil of the healthiest-looking tree in your yard right now.